Every day, 34 people in their 20s and 30s are diagnosed with cancer.
On the 7th of July 2015, I was one of the 34.
On the 28th of August 2008, I was one of the 34.
These are the stories of what happens afterwards.
This is AfterThoughts.
This episode of AfterThoughts is created in partnership with Life Effects by Teva and supported by Trekstock. Toby! Hello.
Hey Alice, thank you for that. I feel bad that I haven't done that for you, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do that. But how are you? You all right?
I am good, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. We are here for Series 3.
Series 3?
Of AfterThoughts.
1, 2, 3. Like 2 days before our 1 year anniversary.
And the special gift that we have been fortunate to be able to record with a special guest, which will be released very soon. Well, it would have been released by the time.
It'll have been released. They'll have already had it, so
they'll be done with their gift. They'll be like, give us more.
Over it, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're back with the first episode of Series 3, and oh boy, is it a cracker. Before we get into that, the fact that the stay-at-home order has been lifted, and that means that outdoor sport can resume. And the fact that outdoor sport can resume means that outdoor swimming can resume, which means that at 2 o'clock, I am going for a swim, my first swim for nearly 3 months. And I am really excited about it.
Yes, we can all tell how excited you are about it.
Look,
but it's very exciting for you, and for all those people who's suddenly getting out, able to be out in a different way, and
oh my goodness,
that moment you're jumping into the water, I'm expecting is going to be really exciting.
Well, I'll be walking in slowly because it's less than 10 degrees, and to jump in would be foolish and could potentially risk heart failure.
Okay.
So I will be walking in slowly, as
Please
is the safe way to enter water when it's that cold. But yeah, I'm super excited. I use cold water swimming for my mental health, and I have really, really missed it. And it just, I don't know, I've really felt this winter lockdown. And I am just, getting back in the water. The cold water is like a balm. It's like the best way to soothe my soul. So I'm very, very excited for my swim in a little bit. But yeah, while I will not be diving into the cold water because that would be dangerous, this morning has been fantastic. It has been fantastic to dive into Charlotte's stories of her cancer experience. And thank you. And wow, what an incredible way to kick off Series 3 of AfterThoughts.
It is a bit like, I can imagine, I've never done it before, a bit like cold water swim, I think. Like we've kind of like you're heading into it, and it's like this is a really like the stories just refresh. It's like episode 1 refresh of AfterThoughts, so powerful, so beautifully told, and I just can't
100%. Just I was in such admiration of her determination and her power and just the way she confronts everything. I just felt that she confronts all of the things that she faced and everything she faces head on. And I cannot wait for our listeners to hear all of these stories, and also Charlotte's incredible laugh.
So let's dive in. Alice will be diving in later, but let's us all dive in right now to Charlotte's episode. Hi, Alice.
Hi, Toby.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm extremely excited to say that for today's episode, we are inviting Charlotte to the podcast. Charlotte is a holistic wellness advisor. She's an author, a writer and speaker. I just said author and writer. That's kind of like both the same.
All right.
I think I quite like that. The most recent book being The Hidden Truth. And she is a writer as well, because she was written for Black Women Rising magazine as a featured writer there as well. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to AfterThoughts.
Thank you for both having me and inviting me on.
We are so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us on AfterThoughts.
So we are delighted because we're diving into Series 3's quickfire questions, which there's a whole new load of excitement. I mean, I love the quickfire questions because they're never quick. And really, it's just for us to get like the most bonkers crazy responses about people's like who are the humans that we are meeting on AfterThoughts.
Yeah, because for us I mean, this might be a podcast about cancer, but AfterThoughts is about the human before it's about the person who's had cancer. Like, that's so important for us, and that's why we include these often not that quickfire questions. So shall we make a start?
Charlotte, are you ready for the quickfire questions?
I am ready.
Born ready.
Okay, I'm up first, aren't I? Let's just double check.
You're up first.
Fantastic. Charlotte, what are your pronouns, please?
She, her.
And who do people say that you look like?
I'm Marie one time, which I definitely don't.
Ooh, okay.
But yeah, probably I look more like my dad. And my brother as well a bit, because when my head was shaved, we was like, we've got the same head. Like, it's crazy. But yeah.
I love that.
Charlotte, what film defines your childhood?
Oh gosh. It's not really like a kiddie's film, but all I can think of when I go to my childhood is like, you know, the Kung Fu movies where like the speaking doesn't match what they're actually saying. I used to get forced to watch those all the time by like my brother and my dad. And yeah, it's like literally it made my childhood, and now it's kind of like a guilty pleasure. So yeah, those movies.
I love that Kung Fu movies. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Charlotte, who would you say your hero is?
Okay, so I'm gonna call myself my hero, only because everything that I've gone through, like, yeah, I'm literally just gonna call myself my own hero because of it was pretty heroic, the journey. So yeah, I'm a hero. So yeah.
And Charlotte, nicknames. What was your favourite? Have you had any?
Oh gosh, I've had so many. There was Cece, there was Squeaks, because I used to have a squeaky voice. There was Pumpkin, Peanut, Munchkin. I got so many nicknames. Pookie, I hated that one. I hated that nickname. Oh my gosh. My mom used to call me Princess Pookie. But yeah,
Princess Pookie.
Yeah, it was, I don't even know.
If you had to listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would you choose?
Chronics. I don't know what it's called, but the beginning goes, when I wake up in, oh, let me not sing on the podcast. Wait a minute. Easy. I can't remember the name. I think it's something like, I am blessed. I think that's what it's called, yeah.
Amazing.
Chronics, I am blessed.
Roller coasters. Love them or hate them?
Love them.
Oh, great. And this is a big question. This is a really big question. What is your favourite way to eat a potato?
Oh gosh. Probably I would say I would chop it up. And this would be a sweet potato because I prefer sweet potatoes. So I would chop it up, I'll put on a tray, I'll put some salt on it, some black pepper, some herbs, and I'll just, put it in the oven and just make some sweet potato chips.
Man.
Homemade. Fresh.
Oh, now I really want sweet potato chips. Yes.
And Charlotte, last question. What was your diagnosis, please?
Stage 3 lymphoblastic lymphoma, or also known as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
First up, we are going to talk about beyond a diagnosis. We tell the stories of our diagnosis so many times, and often this story becomes really rehearsed and we can roll it out like it's a performance. And we really want to explore the stories of beyond that. We want to hear more about what happens after that moment. So Charlotte, we're going to hand over to you now to tell us a story about beyond a diagnosis.
Okay, great. I literally see everything that I talk about in my head like a movie when I go back to thinking of what went on after my diagnosis. And I remember my mum dropped me to college. I was studying music technology. And so, first of all, when I was in the car leaving the hospital, I remember me and my mum, we'd gone into a room and we'd just finished basically crying. And I didn't even know why I was crying, but my mum was crying and it made me cry. And we got in the car and she was driving me to the college and she wasn't really saying much, but I don't want to say I was being naive, that I'd just been diagnosed, but I wasn't in a sad mood. I was in like a very upbeat mood. I remember I'd previously had a friend when I was at school who was diagnosed and she got to make a wish. And that was actually one of the first things that was in my head when I was in that car journey. I was like, oh my gosh, I can meet Missy Elliott and maybe she'll help me with my producing the music. Or, oh my gosh, I can go on the Oprah show. Like, it was like, do you realize you've kind of just been diagnosed with cancer because of the things you're thinking of? I'm sure it's not normal. And then my mum didn't really say much. It was quiet. And I got to the college and I walked in and that day seemed really quiet. I don't remember seeing none of the people that I knew. It was like this long walk down the corridor into one of the music classrooms where I had loads of keyboards. And my teacher, I remember he reminds me of like a younger version of like Keanu Reeves, like that was the kind of look that he had. And as like I was there telling him what was going on, his face was definitely just in complete disbelief. And I think I could almost feel like I could feel his feelings in my body, and I didn't really know how to react to that. So to be honest, I just wanted to get out there as soon as possible so I could get on with my day because, like I said, I was in a happy mood, and that kind of made me like bring down the tone a little bit. So it was a brief meeting, a brief chat, and then it was back to the car to see my friend. And I told her about it. And then I called my cousin to tell her that I had it. And she started crying, and then I started crying. And then it was like, this is going to be so emotionally exhausting to tell everyone. So I wrote a text and just texted everyone, oh, by the way, like I've got cancer. And to this day, my friends are like, how could you send me a text that you got cancer? But then me and my friend went shopping. And I remember we went to her grandma's house and she told her grandma that I had cancer and she made me like this really lovely soup. She gave me like a massive bowl of soup. It was like, which was a red pea soup. Like, and so it was a bonus. I was like, oh my gosh. And because of my grandparents live in Jamaica, so that's who usually make that soup for me. It was like, I've got like an extension of my grandparent hair and cooking me the same soup. Like, It was amazing. I loved it.
So next up on Afterthoughts, we are focusing on the invisible impacts. So there are so many things that you might see that somebody who is experiencing cancer is going through, but there are so many things that are underneath the surface and might not be as noticeable. So that's why we have invisible impacts. And it's over to you, Charlotte, to tell your story for this section.
Okay. So invisible impacts for me is definitely going to be based around kind of the things I experienced from my treatment. And when I first was in the hospital, the first few weeks, it was bliss. It was near Christmas. I had loads of visitors. I remember I had like Christmas dinner in hospital. My mum like made the food, brought it in. All my family was there. It was amazing. And I remember it was coming up to New Year's Eve when I was meant to be going like raving in London, and the hospital was in Euston. And I even asked the nurse, "Oh, do you think that I could go out raving and then just come back?" And I was like, "No, I don't think that would be a good idea." And I was like, "Okay, like, okay." And then they was like, "But you're going to be starting treatment on New Year's Eve." So I thought, okay. And it got to that point, I remember watching the fireworks from the window of the hospital. And I remember my mom and dad was there with me. And I remember I beat my dad like at 7 games of solitaire. I'm sure he let me win because he's an absolute pro at that game. So he definitely let me win because he must have like me feeling bad for me. But then the treatment began. And I think that's when things kind of started to hit home. So I was on a high dose of steroids and I got a, steroid-induced psychosis, which is where it was like someone else was living in my head. I later named her Sharona. And it was like we were fighting for who was in control. And she was really miserable, really angry, really sad, Like she was like all of my negative emotions, and then I was a happy emotion. But she was mainly who was in control. And it was really scary because I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Get Out, but it was like that. I was in like the sunken place and Sharona was in control of everything. And it took ages before like the doctors would listen and change my steroid dose to kind of make it so that I wasn't having these psychosis episodes. And they finally kind of like died down a bit. And I was like, okay, now I can kind of get on with the treatment and focus. And just 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, I had a chemotherapy drug that run through my system for 24 hours. And I remember I'd gone out to pick like my outfit for my birthday. And I come back and had a nap. And then I woke up and my arm was dead. And I just thought I'd slept on it bad. And I was like, "Mom, look at this." And we were both laughing, like, "Oh my gosh." And then we're like, "Hang on a minute, why is it not waking up?" So I got up to walk to the bathroom and I was all walking staggered, like I was drunk or something. And my mom was like, "Something's not right here. You need to go to the hospital." So as we went to the hospital, I think within 3 to 4 hours, my whole body shut down. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. I couldn't swallow. All I could do was blink. And at that point, I was just, I think I wasn't scared, but I was like, what's happening to me? Like, this isn't a part of cancer. In my head, I was thinking, I thought you were just meant to lose your hair and feel sick. I didn't think you were meant to get all of these kind of crazy side effects. So the doctors actually, they were worried. They didn't know whether the cancer had spread to my brain or whether it was the chemotherapy that I'd had. And when they did the MRI, which was really scary because being in the MRI is not great anyway, But when they cage down your whole body and you really can't move, it's like you just have this crazy anxiety. And they did the MRI and they found out it was a chemotherapy that caused this side effect. And they didn't know if I was going to walk again or talk again. And it was just from me doing a lot of like physiotherapy, hard work, having to kind of change my mindset and stuff that allowed me to get in a more mobile state. And again, I had another time where it happened to me again because of the chemo and the infection. It caused my body to shut down again, and it took away my balance and my coordination. So because of this, it was really hard for me because I become very sensitive to the chemotherapy, and it just kind of just kept having a negative effect on my body. And I don't say this is extremely rare because it was like a 1 in I don't know how many million chance of it happening, but it happened to me. And for me, that was like the biggest invisible impact, because dealing with cancer was one thing, but then dealing with the whole mobility thing and being left with a long-term disability, that was a whole other thing. And it kind of meant that I definitely couldn't go back to the life I had before in any way, shape, or form. So I think there's two massive moments where it was like a relief. One was where I had been on a food tube for weeks because I couldn't speak or swallow properly. And when they finally said to me, oh, you're going to be allowed to like come up with the food tube and we can try some stuff. And I was like, yay. And then they're like, but you got to start off with like yogurt. And I hated yogurt, but when they gave me the yogurt and the first spoonful, it tasted like the best thing I'd ever had in my whole life. Because like, after not having food for so long, and like, it's like when you're on that food tube, you always feel full. Like after that was finally gone and I could actually taste something in my mouth, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like the best thing in the world. And I still hate yogurt, but at that moment, I loved the yogurt. Like it was great. Then I think for my walking, it'd been so many weeks where they were moving my body around, and it was like, okay, we're gonna try and stand up. And they moved me to the edge of the bed, and like that was helping me like sit on the bed. And I was trying for like a good half an hour, and I was like, it's all right, we'll try tomorrow. And I was like, no, I'm gonna stand today. And then I gave it like one last final try, and I pushed myself up. And I was just there like, I'm standing! Like after like so long of having to be laying on my back and not moving, I was like, I'm actually standing. Like they said I wouldn't be able to do these things, and I'm doing it. Like it was like a massive like, okay, this is like the first hurdle that we'll go over. There's gonna be loads more of these to come. Like, yeah, it was an amazing moment. I loved it.
Up next, we're going to talk about those around us, because we know that while a cancer diagnosis happens to the patient, obviously, it also happens to the people around us as well. This section explores how those people are impacted. And we're going to hand over to Charlotte now to explore some of her stories of those around us. Was that all right, Toby? Over to you, Charlotte.
Okay, great. So for me, before I was even diagnosed, I didn't even realize, but me and my family, it was almost like we were kind of like living all our own separate lives. I lived with my mom, my dad, and I've got an older brother and older sister, so I'm the youngest. And everyone was kind of just doing their own thing. Like I said, as a college, just getting along with life. And when the cancer happened, it really just made us all so much closer, because of you start seeing the value in the little things and just the value in spending time together. And I mentioned that Christmas at the hospital. That's actually one of my favorite Christmases that I had, because it was just like the simplicity of it, but it was just so beautiful. And I think one of the main people I would say there was a great improvement in our relationship is definitely me and my mom. Like, we didn't have a bad relationship before, but I would say there was like a lack of communication. And when it got to the point where I couldn't walk or I couldn't talk and, I couldn't do certain things, my mom was like my full-time carer. So, that saying, like, I think it's once an adult, twice a child. Well, probably gonna have to be like 3 times a child, because when my body shut down, my mom literally had to do everything for me again. And we grew so close. Luckily, her and my dad, they actually run a business, and she's allowed to take the time out to look after me. But when I say she literally gave up her life and put her life on hold to help me out, like, the strength of how she coped, like, I never once saw her crying. Us all crying together. Like, she was such a pillar, such a tower of strength and confidence, and like helping me get out of sticky situations or where I fell down. And there was this one day where we was at home and she was working from home doing her paperwork, and I was sitting in this seat and I was just kind of feeling a bit like, I can't believe this is like my life. Like, I was sad. And she was like, right, get up. She's like, we're gonna go on a drive. And really and truly, I didn't really want to get up, but I was like, okay. I was like, let's go. And I was thinking, where's she gonna take me? Like, around the block or something. And then we got in the car and we got on the motorway, and we just kept driving. And then we ended up in Southend. And it was a nice day, it was sunny. And she's like, right, we're gonna get some fish and chips. And like, we couldn't find the fish and chip shop nowhere, the one that she wanted to go to. So we were just driving around, and then we actually ended up going back to where we live, which is in Essex, Hornchurch at the time, and buying fish and chips on the top of the road, so we just gone all the way to Southend, but we ended up eating the fish and chips on the top of the road. But it was just the thought that she had put into that, actually thinking, oh, let me do something to cheer her up. Like, I know there's a lot of people who don't have that support, but I did. I really had an amazing support around me. And even with my friends, yes, you'll hear a lot of people say, cancer will definitely show you, who your friends are. And a few of the friends, they did drop off, but a lot of them actually become a lot closer to. And I'm still closer now. And it's allowed me to meet some amazing people, and even the women within the Black Women Rising community, who are a great support, and they understand, the journey. It's just been kind of like a blessing to be aligned with so many powerful, amazing women as well. So yeah, the people around me, I would just say they are one of the reasons I was able to get through my journey, because of, when you don't have that strength, but you can kind of pull the strength from others, they allowed me to lean on them in that way. So yeah, for me, that was an important part of my journey.
Next on Afterthoughts, we are going to be diving into the lost conversation section. So we know that in the cancer community, we are starting to hear lots of different conversations pop up of ways that we are not serving our community, or things that the community want us to be looking at a lot more. And this is an opportunity to highlight those things that we need to be having more conversations on. So Charlotte, it is over to you for the lost conversation section.
Okay. So for me, I think a massive part of my journey that I didn't even realize until years later has to be about grief. And this is to do with myself and to do with others. So when I was going through cancer, just a few months before I was diagnosed, I remember my sister come round one day and she was talking about, my friend, her boyfriend just been diagnosed with leukemia, like he's in a hospital up London, like it's he's so young. And I remember the time like I heard it, but I didn't really think anything too much of it because I wasn't connected to the person or anything. Then to be diagnosed a few months later and be in that same hospital and actually meet this person and have conversations with this same person who I've been told about months before. And there were so many other people on that ward, like from the age of 13 up to the age of like early 20s who I connected to. And there was like a good few in particular, and he was one of them. Like, it's almost like there's this unspoken, like, understanding between all of those people that, you know, you're all on this journey together, all kind of going through it, and you just kind of get each other. And there was him as well as another young lady. She was my age. And I always say we used to like reap havoc on the ward because we had our own private rooms. And whenever you have your own private room, you're not really meant to be leaving it because of your immune system's low. But we all used to go into each other's rooms, and the nurse would always be like, get back to your room and all of this. And we'll be like having jokes and laughing. And I almost felt like she was even like a reflection of who I was as well. And we got on so well. And I remember the time when my body had shut down and I was in the hospital and I couldn't move or nothing. And my mum went and got her and wheeled her into my room. And then she was looking at me and she started crying. And then my mum started crying. And I'm just there smiling. And she's like, how can you still be smiling? And what I wanted to say to her is, I'm still here, but I couldn't talk or nothing. So all I could do was like smile and be like, hey, like it's all good. Like I wanted her to know I wasn't sad. And we just had this great kind of connection. And I remember when I had last seen her, she had gone into remission. And we used to like text each other, talking about all the things we're gonna do. Like when we were both better, was gonna go carnival, like she's gonna have this float. It was gonna be like a turn up. We was gonna have a party sort of thing. And I remember a few months had passed and I hadn't heard nothing from her. And I texted her and I got a reply saying, who's this? And I was thinking, is she playing games with me? Like, how can you be asking me who's this? And then I was like, it's Charlotte from the hospital. And her mum was like, I'm so sorry, Charlotte. Paris passed away. And my mind was blown because the last time I spoke to her, she was in remission. So for her to just suddenly be gone, like, I didn't know what to do. And then the same guy who I said that I met in the beginning, he went into remission and then it came back within like 2 months. And within, I think, 4 months, he had passed away. And all the other friends, the 6 people I made friends with, they all passed away. And no one, and I can tell you this, no one ever can ever prepare you for kind of dealing with that kind of grief. In fact, for so long, it was just suppressed, you know, because I didn't know how to deal with losing that many people at that time. And you can't help but think, like, why are they gone? And why am I still here? Like, so many of them. I even remember I wrote a poem and it was about saying, did I really die? And they're really still there? Like, I just couldn't get my head around it. And then there's a whole thing of the grief of losing yourself, losing that person who you was, you know, before you got diagnosed. And like, you go through so much during your cancer journey that you evolve and you're no longer that person. And sometimes people can't even understand you because of the way you change through that journey. It's almost like you can't expect me to still be the same person after I've just gone through such a life-changing experience. So you almost have to grieve losing that part of yourself. And for me, it was a tricky age because I was going from being a teenager into adulthood. So it was like I was almost grieving my younger self to then turn into this mature adult where I was expected, I guess, to get on with things. But yet so much had changed. I've been left as a completely different person. But even my voice had changed from like where I lost my voice. I couldn't even, I wasn't mobile like I was mobile before, and I used to be a dancer, like all of these things. I basically had to grieve and grieve the old version of me. And it's something that I don't know if now people can get counseling and stuff over the grief of losing yourself and losing all your friends on the ward, but at that time I didn't. I kind of just had to go through the motions on my own. And that was for me is a tough thing. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about the people that you lose on the journey because of that can really mess with your mind. So I would definitely tell my younger self to express more. Like, don't be scared to talk about your feelings. Like, don't be worried about making other people feel uncomfortable about your journey. Express it, lay it out, because when you suppress it, it will one day come out and it may come out like an explosion. So it's better to let it come out as you're feeling it, letting people know, like, it's really healing, it's really freeing, even if it's just you writing about it in a journal or speaking to someone you love or speaking to a complete stranger. Just find a way to express yourself. It can even be through a form of art or dance or music, but find a way to express things, don't suppress them. So that was how I ended up being an author. Like, it wasn't something I enjoyed. But you see, when my voice got taken away, I had to find some sort of enjoyment in writing because I had to find a way to communicate better. And it was a way where I found it easier to write down my thoughts or write a poem rather than speaking it out and saying how I felt. So, yeah, it was definitely a part of my healing because of before, it wasn't something that I did.
Brand new for this series of Afterthoughts is this section, Not Your Average. So sort of based off the back of the teenage kicks section of the teenage years, we are going to talk about Not Your Average. So this section is a chance for us to explore the things that we as young adults who have had cancer may have experienced that those who haven't had cancer maybe haven't experienced. So Charlotte, over to you to tell us a story about Not Your Average.
Okay, so I think for me, this is all about how the whole journey kind of changed me. And for me to explain that, I've got to explain what I used to be like. So obviously I was 17. I was very, how can I say, hyper, like, so I was very reactive as well. So if something happened, I was ready to like the anger will come out of me sort of thing. Definitely had a lot of suppressed anger there. I was very ungrateful. I think I was quite entitled. So all the things, I had quite a good upbringing, but I feel like it was like I felt like these things are owed to me. These things should be me. Like, this is how it's meant to kind of be. And when my body shut down and it started coming back, I realized how ungrateful I've been for little things in my life. So even to do with my walking and running, like, you just become so grateful that, oh my gosh, I can take a step. Oh my gosh, I can feel my hand, I can feel my feet. Oh my gosh, like my hair, it's going back. Like, you become grateful for all the little things. Whereas before, as a younger person, I definitely was not. Like, I took life for granted, you know. I remember like I used to love going like partying underage. I would use my cousin's ID and stuff. And when I was there in those moments, it's almost like I didn't appreciate them. But even though I matured after my experience, I have to look back and say, I'm grateful I did those things because I still actually got to live those things that I wouldn't have usually got to do until you're 18 to go raving in the London clubs. But because I had the ID, I was able to do those things. Like I was able to look back and appreciate, I was able to live life in that way back then. But at the same time, hands have definitely matured me. And I even sometimes find it hard to be in certain conversations with certain friendship groups of how they look to life, you know, when people are complaining about certain things, like everyday things in life. And I know I still may do it now, but at that particular time, it was like, no, like we're alive, like we should be grateful, like, oh my gosh, like the sun's shining, you know, like them little annoying people who find a silver line to everything. That's me. Like I was like, no, like someone will come and tell me something like, no, like we've got really good weather today though. Or, oh, but you did this though. So like I found a way to find like a positive in every situation. And I noticed that even though I have mobility issues and all of that, I'm so much more happier now because I'm able to see the good things in my life. Because before, it was almost like I was just picking out all the bad points or the things that weren't making me happy. Whereas now, my main focus is on the good things and what can make me happy. So, you know, the whole experience, it definitely helped me kind of learn what to appreciate in life and appreciate myself more, appreciate my body more, appreciate my health more, um, like all the time, not just when I'm ill. 'Cause you know, some people, they don't appreciate their health, then they get cold and it's like, I really wish like I could feel better. But I'm trying to be in gratitude for my health in every moment rather than just when I feel ill. So it's just that awareness of the body, awareness of the mind, awareness of the spirit. I've like had this new kind of awakening to, I guess. And I like being crazy. I like being weird. I like being unique because it makes me just comfortable in who I am. And I don't have to try and live up to be like anyone else. So there's no pressure. That's why I'm my own hero. So yeah.
So the last section of Afterthoughts is always for us to give an opportunity for us to talk about some of the lighter moments that might happen during an experience of cancer, because we do know that those happen. And it's really important for us to share those as much as it is important for us to share some of those other moments. So the last section is Don't Laugh. We're going to pass over to Charlotte. Charlotte, I'm imagining you've got a story for us. What's your Don't Laugh story?
Okay, so this was like shortly after my body had shut down. I remember it was in April. I remember it was the same day that the marathon was going to be running because it was a Sunday. And my mum and dad were there in the room. And I've got my nose pierced. And my mum went to hug me. And my nose piercing, like, it's a stud. It got caught on her jumper. And it got pulled out onto her top. And obviously I can't speak, so I can't say my nose piercing's on your top. It was so frustrating, right? I couldn't talk. All I could do was go, so I was like going, My dad was like, what do you want to do? Go toilet? I was like, no, like, And he was like, you're hungry? I was like, I was trying to point with my eyes. You know how hard it is to try and point with your eyeballs and be like, my nose study's on her top. Like, finally, she realized it was caught on her top and they put it back in. But we was laughing for a good like a half an hour afterwards because the fact that I couldn't actually just say, no, simply just go, oh, my nose starts caught on your top. But it was a whole thing of like, like it was complete frustration. But it's something that we always laugh about now because it's like, it was hilarious afterwards. It took a good half an hour just meant to realize. So yeah, that's my
Also, as a fellow nose piercer, a fellow nose pierced person, like, number one, I bet that also hurt.
Yeah.
When it came out. And number two, I can just imagine the frustration and also the hilarity of your dad like trying to figure out what was wrong with you, what the issue was, and just it being so far from what your actual issue was. I can totally imagine how frustrated you must have been as well. Like, I just want my nose stood back in so that my nose hole doesn't close up. Oh, bless you. That's a great story.
A little like bonus story.
Let's go for it.
Story. Okay, so I remember I was telling you about the psychosis and the whole Sharona thing. So you're gonna jump from me being Sharona to like me being Charlotte. There was one night in the middle of the night, I woke my mum up, must be like 2 a.m. and I started singing, and I was convinced that I could sing now. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's that Mum. I'm gonna apply for the X Factor. Like I'm brilliant. Like this is amazing. And she was like, I think you should just sleep on it. I was like, okay. Then when I woke up, it was like me again, and I was like, I can't sing again. She was like, no, Charlotte, sorry, you can't. And I was just like, oh gosh.
What were you singing? What were you singing? Can you remember?
I don't even remember what it was, but
your mum can remember. She is holding that information from you.
I really hope it was my Sharona.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh. I love Sharona's confidence though, like just a belief in herself. Like that's kind of a great thing, right?
Yeah, she definitely had some crazy confidence.
Oh, Charlotte, it's really been absolutely fantastic to have you on. Honestly, like I have loved hearing your stories, and listening to you unpick your experience has been just an absolute honor. And thank you so much for sharing with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you both for having me on the show as well. I really appreciate that.
Oh, you are so welcome.
Thank you, Charlotte. So, Alice, there was Charlotte's stories, Charlotte's episode, and which is kicking us off for Series 3. And what a set of stories to kick us off for Series 3.
Yeah, I mean, I am just bowled over by Charlotte and her incredible stories, and just the way she talks with such eloquence. And I just think she is a powerhouse, an absolute powerhouse. And
well, you can tell that she tells stories and writes, and like she's just got all of that.
Yeah, and I just think it's fascinating the way creative people pivot. When they can't do one creative thing, creative people have to create. And I think it's just really interesting that when she said about the fact that she couldn't do the creative things that she usually turned to, she turned to this thing that she previously hated and started becoming a writer. I think that's really fascinating.
So Alice, I'm going to ask you then, what's your afterthoughts on this episode?
You know, my afterthought on this episode of Afterthoughts is about this idea of grieving for yourself. And it's something that I've talked about and thought about and written about before. And there's an amazing organisation called Life, Death, Whatever, run by two fantastic women called Anna and Louise. And they have a thing on Instagram where they get people to write 5 things. And I wrote 5 things about being diagnosed with cancer in your 20s, and one of mine was about grieving for yourself even if you've survived. And I just think it's such an important thing to recognize, and I think it's a really important thing for us to know as young cancer, in inverted commas, survivors, that it is okay to grieve for yourself. And actually, I think it's a really important thing for us to see that we need to grieve for ourselves and grieve for the people we could have been and the people that we might have been and the lives that we might have had, while also recognizing and appreciating the wonderful things and the wonderful experiences that we have had, and just sitting with that and saying, actually, that's okay. And I think that's really, really important.
I think as well, Alice, there's like the importance of the process, right?
Yeah.
And that it's ongoing. And like I'm I'm coming up to a 10-year date since I finished treatment and things, and that it's still it's still okay to be going through these things. And
right, it's a process.
And I just think it sounds like that is an acceptance of that, an acceptance that it's not just going to be a switch.
It's that classic thing, isn't it, of healing isn't linear. I think that is so important, to give yourself permission to understand that. And also, like, I'm so forgiving of other people, and I'm so often like, oh yeah, healing isn't linear for them, but for me, well, healing has to be linear for me, because I'm different. But I read something recently, and it just said, what makes you so special that you think you don't deserve compassion? And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And I think, that's a thing we should remember and a thing we should think about. And I think often we're all guilty of not giving ourselves the same space to grieve that we would allow other people. So this is just me saying to anyone who's listening who maybe isn't as kind to themselves as they are to other people, what makes you so special that you don't deserve compassion? What makes you so special that you don't deserve to grieve for yourself in the same way that you would give others permission to grieve for themselves? So Toby, oh God, I'm just yammering on today. Toby, what is your afterthought on this episode of I'm going to say that again. So Toby, what is your afterthought on this episode of Afterthoughts?
It's definitely going to be about appreciation for me, and Charlotte's stories about appreciating her health, and not just that starting when you are unwell and suddenly and I know, I think as somebody who has been unwell, it's definitely something that's in my mind about appreciating the day, appreciating the moments and things. But I think she just reminded me in a really wonderful way about how important it is to appreciate these little moments in the best way we can at that point. And today it's sunny outside, and it's a lovely thought that I might be able to go and enjoy that and leave this space, and particularly because of where we are in the lockdown roadmap, is that I'm able to leave this flat and get some fresh air, and remembering that was a big thing a while back. And I'm really taking that forward, and particularly as we look at all of the side effects that Charlotte experienced because of her chemotherapy, and what the impacts of those things are, and how she has come to appreciate her body and appreciate her mind. And I think I'm really excited to take that forward from today, and I hope all of our listeners do. And Alice, I really hope you appreciate that swim you are going on today.
Oh my God, Toby, I'm going to appreciate it so much.
And we cannot wait to see that Instagram post of you doing that face, and it's probably that face you're pulling right now, that face as you come out of the water with that joy that you will have. I look forward to seeing that, and let's appreciate today, and I'm appreciating Charlotte's stories. So thank you so much to Charlotte for joining us. Thank you, listeners, for coming along with us for the start of Series 3. There's so many great storytellers coming up, aren't there, Alice?
So many great storytellers. I am super, super pumped for Series 3.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and we will be in your ears again soon.
Ta-ra!
If today's episode of Afterthoughts has brought up any thoughts or feelings that you'd like to speak to someone about, we really recommend grabbing a cuppa with a friend or dropping them a message. There are tons of charities out there who can help you if you've been through cancer and need a bit of extra psychological support.
Thanks so much to Trekstock for supporting another series of Afterthoughts. Trekstock helps young adults diagnosed with cancer to get moving again after cancer stops them in their tracks, and the work they do is incredible. Find out more at trekstock.com.
This episode of Afterthoughts was created in partnership with Life Effects by Teva, an initiative shaped by patients for patients to help those with chronic illness live better days. Find out more and read articles written by those living with and beyond cancer at lifeeffects.teva.